where we are in our investigation concerning the overdose deaths that happened last week in our community. Just want to remind everyone this is an ongoing investigation, and there will be information we will not be able to release to not interfere with the investigation. Some of that information we won't be releasing are victims' identities, as well as any photographs of items seized. Based on the increased overdoses and overdose deaths last year, members of the Organized Crime Division, including Narcotic Support Unit, Major Crime Suppression Unit, along with members of our Austin Police Department South Metro Tactical Unit, began targeted investigations, undercover buy operations, and targeted enforcement in the areas where we saw the increase of overdoses. These areas were the downtown area, North Austin, and portions of South Austin. The actions resulted in numerous arrests related to narcotics, which the names have already been previously released. Just want to clarify that the individuals arrested during these investigations are not linked as of right now to any of the overdose victims. And the purpose of these operations was to try to identify dealers responsible and the sources of the narcotics which caused the overdoses. During the operation, we seized various narcotics which also contained fentanyl. Some of those substances were crack cocaine, methamphetamine, and in one instance, marijuana. The Austin Police Department and members of the Organized Crime Division are working diligently to locate the source of the narcotics, which has caused these overdoses in the last week. If anyone has any information regarding the if anyone has information regarding individuals distributing fentanyl in our community, we ask that you please contact Crime Stoppers. Tips can be made on their website at www.austincrimestoppers.org or by calling 512-472-8477. Tips given which lead to the arrest may result in awards up to $1,000. So now we'll open up to questions at this time.
So there's a clarification. You said that none of the victims are connected to these suspects. So, but in the press release you say several suspects in connection to multiple fentanyl overdoses. So
the investigations that we did, meaning the targeted enforcement, the undercover operations, those investigations were a result or was because of the overdoses we saw. And the arrests that were made because of that, these people aren't linked to the victims of the overdoses. They were just part of some of the folks that were arrested during these enforcement and investigative actions.
Is that why we don't see like the death or like murder associated with these charges?
That's correct.
Here you, Belinda.
I'd love to ask you, in the press release that was sent out yesterday with the 5 people that are in custody at the moment, it mentioned specifically their race, and we were looking at previous press releases and they don't always mention race. Was there any reason or factor that went into why you mentioned in the press release that each of these 5 suspects that are in custody were African American?
No, it was just giving all the information that we had.
Is there any protocol for when race would play a factor into a case like this, or when you would mention race or not mention race?
That would be a question for the PIO unit.
The affidavits have mentioned that a possible dealer for those overdoses downtown lived in the St. John's area and that officers were staking out that home. Whatever happened there, was there an arrest of that potential dealer, or are you still looking for that person?
So one individual was arrested. We haven't linked them to being the actual dealer responsible for the overdoses in the downtown area, but the information that we received was potentially came from that area of St. John's.
We'll go to Brianna and then
what's the concern level here when it comes to the marijuana that was found laced with fentanyl? Is that something you guys come across frequently?
So it's not something we come across frequently.
Okay.
We have seen it in the past. It is concerning to us, not only with marijuana, but all the substances that they're being mixed with fentanyl. And it's a concern that all people should have when consuming illicit narcotics. And that's one of the risks of it, is you really don't know what's in it.
Just a quick follow-up, does that change any of the, right now the prioritization for charges related to marijuana is, a little bit lower level right now. Does this, prevalence of this kind of change that at all when it comes to the investigations?
I know with us in the Organized Crime Division, we're not going to change our protocol. I mean, we're still going to investigate those crimes and those possession charges and delivery charges and file the appropriate charges.
Carolina from Univision. When it comes to more arrests, if you're saying that none of these were linked to those specific people who died of an overdose, that means whoever caused it is still out there. So are we expecting more arrests in the coming weeks? Is this an ongoing investigation that's going to take months? I mean, what are you seeing here? Taking into account this hasn't happened since 2015.
Right. So it is an ongoing investigation. I will say that the investigative steps needed to make a charge for either murder or delivery of controlled substance causing serious bodily injury or death does take some time. There's a lot of different steps that we have to take because we want to make sure we provide and we present the strongest case to the district attorney's office to be able to hold those responsible for these actions.
So more arrests will be expected depending on the investigation?
Depends on the investigation. We hopefully so.
There's been a fentanyl crisis for some time, but this even seems like a surge of some sort. What's causing it, and who's behind it, and where's it coming from?
So the who's behind it, we don't know for sure right now. The cause of it, fentanyl has always been, like you said, an issue in our communities and all over the United States. The theories that we have now is here in Austin, crack cocaine comes from cocaine. And so what happens is it is bought and sold by individuals and dealers. That cocaine ends up being mixed with other substances to create more volume so that the way the dealer can make more money. So potentially what happened is somewhere down this line of people selling it to other dealers and getting to different buyers is that fentanyl was mixed into it, and these mixtures aren't done in labs, and so there's no scientific approach to it. So potentially too much fentanyl, or it looks like too much fentanyl got mixed in with this substance to cause the overdoses that we saw.
And then
Travis County EMS's heat map showed a lot of those incidents happening in downtown Austin. Is APD focusing on that area? Are there several areas of where incidents are increasing and maybe are now a focal point?
We're focused on all the areas. We have done some operations in the downtown area to try to target those, but we're looking at all the areas and trying to enforce and take investigative steps in all those.
over here.
Yeah, hi. Was testing for the fentanyl done on the scene or in a lab or both?
So it was done at the scene on preemptive test kits that we have. Now it will be followed up by labs, our lab forensic unit, conducting more in-depth tests on that substance.
And just to clarify, how many total arrests have been made so far of suspects that are directly linked to that overdose surge that we saw from last week?
So directly linked to it, that we believe were involved in dealing to the victims, we have none at this time.
Because the 5 arrested was part of the undercover operation that started when all this search happened.
Correct.
Can you talk a little bit about these suspects? Are they homeless? Are they drug dealer? Are they drug users themselves? I know many have been arrested before, so you've probably dealt with them. Who are they?
So by suspects, are you talking about for the ones that have been arrested? I don't have all the information on them. The Organized Crime Division, we don't target individuals that use narcotics. We target the distributors of narcotics, and that's where we focus our investigations.
I feel like though you can tell if someone is feeding their drug addiction by selling drugs. Is that the case in this situation?
I don't have that information right now, I'm sorry.
You mentioned that these 5 suspects, oh, I'm sorry.
You're fine. You can
Okay.
go.
I was gonna say, you mentioned these 5 suspects were kind of part of the wider investigation that stemmed from, what happened downtown, but not directly linked. Can you talk about how the focus kind of moved from downtown into up north, where it seems like all these arrests were made?
So we looked at where we had different overdoses. The downtown was an area, as well as North Austin and in the Southeast Austin area. So we targeted those each areas during different investigative steps to target those areas.
So last week the department said that the 2 arrests that were made kind of more early on in this case weren't linked to a bigger drug operation. Do we think that any of these are?
Not at this time, we don't. Once again, historically, a lot of the narcotic dealers that we see here, especially at street level, aren't a major organized crime. It's individuals who are out to make a profit for themselves.
How do you tackle that versus tackling trying to track down, a singular dealer?
Step by step. So, you know, we go after a dealer, whether it's a street level or a higher up, and we just keep following the leads to try to get to the main source.
You've kind of already touched on this, but I'd love to hear you expound on it a little bit more about what it's going to take to bring to prosecutors the idea of a murder charge related to these individuals. What's that going to look like, and what direction are you guys heading in for that?
How that looks is we have to be able to based on the aspects of the law for murder, to show that the person not only delivered fentanyl to an individual that resulted in their death. There's different investigative steps to determine that, which I'm not going to go into today.
You mentioned obviously the role that the public can play in helping to apprehend maybe more suspects here. What should someone look for? How can you be vigilant and notice maybe the movement of fentanyl in your community?
For one, I mean, as we saw the overdoses,
Yeah.
just be mindful of suspicious activity in your neighborhoods. You know, if you see people loitering about, meeting up with multiple people at one time, over and over, you know, or in residence, if you see a lot of traffic at a certain a residence, either apartment or house, that's not not norm for the other rest of the community, you know, provide that information for us.
And a question, so now, does it seems like this bad batch, like they were calling in last week at those press conference, is that bad batch out of the streets of Austin, or we really don't know?
We really don't know. I hope it is, but we don't have any way to confirm whether it is or not.
I guess, just as you move forward, trying to find people that are directly connected to this overdose surge, what's the biggest challenge that you're running into in trying to connect the dots and get to those people responsible and make those arrests?
Right now, one is cooperation from the victims of these overdoses. You know, trying to get them to cooperate with us to give us the information that we need to be able to pursue those charges.
Are they cooperating?
Go ahead.
The victims, are they cooperating?
Some are and some aren't. So I'm not going to go into detail about how many are helping. Once again, you know, that kind of it would hinder our investigation.
To what degree are the Mexican cartels involved in the trafficking? No.
At this point, we don't have any information that they're directly involved with these overdoses yet.
Are these just kind of loose operations, or I mean, is there any one major transporter of these? Or?
It's too early right now. I would say at the street level that a lot of these happened at is typically historically more of a loose group of people, working individually. You know, at that level. Going further up, we don't have the information yet to know where exactly it came from or if there's any cartel involvement in it.
So going back to, you mentioned some of the victims are hesitant to cooperate. Did they give you any indication as to why they don't want to be more forthcoming?
I don't have that information.
And I guess, what's your message to the dealers? What's your message to the people that are responsible for this overdose surge?
My message to them is to stop. Stop spreading the poison that's affecting our community. You know, we don't know. You know, we don't know what they're selling, and you know how they're doing it. So you know, the only thing we do is ask them to stop. Be responsible for their actions. Understand the effects that they're having on families and friends in our community, and to please stop doing it.
And one more clarification, he just kind of briefly touched on it. When you were talking about the cartels, I know we have reported this in the past. I know in this area, apparently it's more the Cartel de Sinaloa and Cartel de Jalisco Federación. So at this point, this seems to be just something isolated, or could it be directly related with any of those two that already have ties? This is coming from the DEA, so that's my source.
I mean, at this point in our investigation, right now, it's like I said, it's going to be a loose net of individuals. Could it potentially, if that's where the investigation leads us, we're definitely going to follow up on that.
I guess, is there any kind of outreach being done just to some of the people who may be using these drugs, and just efforts out in the community right now to kind of inform them on what's out there?
There has been different organizations that have been reaching out to those who are suffering from addiction. I don't have the names of those individuals, but I know that's been mentioned in previous press conferences.
I think we'll wrap up with that. Thank you so much.